Did you know that you can stream the best of HBO shows and more with the new Astro? Better than before, no rain interruptions, no repeats, just stream anytime and on demand via the Astro Ultra Box. It starts from only RM 59.90 a month, and you can find out more information at astro.com.my. You're listening to the Goggler podcast. Bahir and Uma with you, and today we're going to be talking about Netflix's brand new reality TV show, Squid Game, the challenge, in which 456 people compete in Squid Game like challenges for a whopping 4.56 million US dollars. Only they don't actually die in real life because no one could get away with that, not even Netflix.
I think you could.
I have many problems with the show, Bayer.
Really?
Yeah, it's a 10 episode series. My first problem is that they've launched the first 5 episodes, and then they're going to release episodes 6 through 9, and then they're going to release the finale a week after that.
In 3 batches? I thought it
It's
was just
three
two.
batches. So it's
Good
1 to
lordy.
5, 6 to 9, and then episode 10 a week after that on 6th of December. I have a problem with that because honestly, it feels like it's being stretched out for far too long. I'm beginning to lose interest in these individuals because obviously, what made Squid Game the actual series great was that there was drama and tension and it was fiction and you could do some crazy stuff. This one feels like a lot of whiny Americans.
And one really whiny Italian.
The thing is, when I'm watching something like this, I feel like all of these people are so tuned to what is expected from a reality TV show that it ends up being annoyingly performative.
Yeah.
And that was my problem with it. I think it looks good. I think the production is fine. I went and did a bunch of research afterwards, and yes, it is absolute fucking chaos. Like, apparently, there are all these lawsuits that are now being triggered because
Oh, really?
yes, some of the contestants are wanting to sue for like personal injury and stuff that they suffered during the filming of this. Funnily enough, the making of drama is a lot more exciting than the actual Squid Game
Oh,
thing.
wow.
And then the other thing that annoys me is I don't know why they pretend, like why they don't just go all the way. I don't mean kill people, but I mean, why not have the people dressed in those pink jumpsuits just shoot them with paint guns? Why have a paint thing in your clothes? Like, why not play to the audience, right? Why does the paint splatter have to be black? Why not red? Like, everyone's seen Squid Game, everyone knows what to expect. And I'm watching this and it just feels so half assed in that sense. Like, all of the drama has been stripped away.
I understand why the decision of the red thing. I think red squibs just feel a bit much.
But everything else in the show is a bit much. Like, no one dies, but everyone looks like they're being fucking tortured, dude. Like, I kept wondering, why are people crying so easily? Like, nothing's happened. Why are you just sitting there crying? And then I read the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm like, oh, I get it. They've been traumatized for a long time. That's why they're crying.
I found that very annoying and grating as well, but I guess I have to read up the backstory and give them maybe a little bit of credit. I agree with you in that it feels very performative. A lot of it feels very performative. Like they've come into it almost like I'm going to be this guy from this season of that show.
Right.
But that's just a problem that we have to deal with moving forward with reality TV competitions, right? Because everybody's seen it. Everybody's seen at least 7 seasons of Survivor. Everybody's seen at least 4 seasons of The Amazing Race. You can't get away from these reality show tropes. But I will say I found it enjoyable enough to keep watching. And I think that is the problem with this multi-release thing, because if it was week to week, I would have probably dropped out in episode 4 or 5 because I don't think it's got that kind of steam to keep me going for 5 weeks. But at the same time, doing it in 3 batches like this, I can very easily see myself forgetting to catch part 2 or part 3. I think they should have just gone with a big drop, promo the hell out of it, and just move on, as opposed to this, because the show's not good enough to keep me going for 10 fucking weeks.
But Netflix cannot admit that the week to week drop is actually something that might work. They must stick with the binge thing, but then break it up into multiple binges in the hope that there won't be an audience drop off.
Look, I'm not on the widest circle of Twitter. I'm not in the biggest groups on Facebook. Yes, I still use Facebook, but I'm not seeing this spoken about anywhere. This came and went just as hard and just as quick as if it was a whole drop. I think if it was a whole drop, maybe there'd be something in the 10 different episodes for people to talk about. But in this, I think it's not going to be enough.
I think there are some interesting new games that they've introduced. So it's not identical to what we saw in Squid Game. But at the same time, I don't know if that is enough because I think what made Squid Game so compelling is how low humanity will sink for money. It doesn't matter if you're greedy or desperate or have no other choice, whatever your motivations might be, that was what we wanted to watch, the absolute worst of humanity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Will morality actually play any part in that story? Of course, that element is removed here. Sure, there's always the idea of capitalism rearing its ugly head. You are in a game show playing for money and you're doing all of these performative tasks. But at the same time, it's not the same because you know it's a game. You know there aren't any real consequences. If you go home, you just go back to your life. It's not like if you lose this, they empty your bank account and fuck you up, right?
It's no different than Survivor, Naked and Afraid, the TV
I
show,
think it
right?
is, though.
You
I
think
think it
so?
is different from something like Survivor, for example, just because of the baggage that Squid Game brings with it. In the sense that the idea of the original Korean series was to shine a light on the darker side of Korea. Like, we get the shiny, glowy side of Korea, but actually, there is a darker side.
Mm,
There are people who have problems with gambling, there's extreme poverty, there's defections, there's all sorts of things that may affect society that we don't necessarily see. And I think Squid Game, the series, actually did a good job of telling that story. And so the baggage that comes with the brand carries a lot of weight, which is what makes it different from Survivor or anything else.
I get that. I see your point, but I think if you're looking at it as just a reality TV competition, my issue with it is that it's just another reality TV competition. It doesn't really do anything particularly special other than have the games be Squid Game themed.
But also, it feels a little too late. That's the other problem.
Oh, it's way too fucking late.
Because so many people have already done the red light, green light game at their birthday parties or made those Dalgona sugar cookie
Yeah.
biscuit type caramel things, honeycomb things, and licked it to win a prize or whatever. Like, we've seen it happen. And so this thing coming, 2 years too late now, just feels like it's a bit old hat. I think that's the
Yeah.
other problem. It could also be due to the fact that Netflix had a lot of production issues. I think it was Variety that released an expose a while back about the conditions in which these players had to go through while shooting this. I think since the series has launched, there have also been a bunch of interviews where they've said that it took 7 hours to shoot the red light, green light thing.
Right.
And so there's one moment in the red light, green light bit where someone is squatting and then she says, "Oh, I can't hold the squat any longer."
Yeah.
And I remember watching it and going, "What's the big deal, bro? You can't hold a squat for 30 seconds." And then you find out that she's been holding a squat for 40 minutes. And you're like, "Oh, I get it." And so for me, the curiosity then lies in why you are shooting it that way. Why does it take 7 hours to shoot the red light, green light thing?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
did they have to shoot the Dalgona cookie thing in quadrants? So they would be shooting one quadrant while the other three quadrants are just pretending and they're not actually doing anything.
Oh, okay. Having been a part of a reality TV show and having had to write those, it feels like they didn't have enough cameras.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And why, oh, why would Netflix not make all of these people sign the strictest of NDAs because all of this is coming out now? It's on TikTok, it's on Instagram Reels,
Mm.
it's on interviews on the internet. And so I think all of that kind of undermines your enjoyment of the show as well.
It really feels like the production woes behind it. I haven't looked it up, but just hearing from what you're saying, it really all just feels a little half-assed. And I think it almost feels like they didn't feel like they planned enough, is the word.
And that's my problem with it, because the only reason I looked it up was because as I was watching it, I had those questions because I was like, wait, something feels off.
Mm.
In the umbrella licking Dalgona thing, there's a way one of the guys looks at another guy, like leans over, looks at his cookie when it breaks, and he has this weird look on his face. And I'm like, well, that's a weird look. That's kind of funny and awkward. And I'm like, I wonder why that was. And I started Googling, and then I was like, oh shit, like all of this stuff was happening. And it meant that the whole experience was even more forced than usual. Like, we know reality TV isn't real, but at the same time, when we find out that everyone is told the better you act after you've been shot, in inverted commas, the more likely you'd get coverage. Means that
Yeah,
everyone's going, oh, you know.
really just hamming it up, right? I find that very disappointing to find out because everybody knows that reality TV is not real, but there's at least a what's the word I'm looking for, understanding that everybody knows a lot of this is fake, but let's try and keep the fakeness to a minimum. To find out that there was a geeing up of the contestants by the producers feels a little unfortunate.
And I blame the production company. And I think, for Netflix, it doesn't really matter. They're buying this show, right? And they know it's going to be number one because it's got the Squid Game brand attached to it. But I kept thinking as I was watching it, if they got the same guys who produced that 100 show, looking for the most physical person in the world, I thought that was incredibly well produced. Even that had some controversy about the finale and the way they did the rope thing, etc., etc. But for the most part, I thought that was really well produced. And I think even if you don't know anything about production or how these things work, as you are watching it, there were certain moments that made me go, eh?
Those bits didn't bother me because I just sort of chalked it down to contestants doing it, right? So, like you were saying, how they would ham up being shot in air quotes or at least being eliminated. I put that down to the contestants hamming it up because they think that they're gonna get on TV if they make it look like they just got shot by a 30 caliber, whatever. But I didn't know that there was an explicit instructions, which is disappointing.
Apparently so. I mean, this is, of course, coming from the contestants themselves. We don't know how accurate it is. It may be more performative stuff on the part of the contestants because
Yeah.
the kind of people who apply for these things want to be seen, want attention, want to make it out in the world. So I'm not sure how much of it is true. So I'm just following the news story just to see what comes next.
Mm.
I think bad planning is the right phrase. For me, there was another marketing thing they did where they got an influencer to record behind the scenes. Only they didn't just say they got a person to visit the set and record behind the scenes. They got this person to go, oh, I'm a contestant and I snuck my camera in and my phone in and nobody
Oh,
knows. And I'm just like, yeah, but it just comes off as being
that's
super
yeah,
fake and like
yeah, yeah. That's a
just
problem. That's unfortunate.
yeah, I think those are
Yeah.
the kind of things that undermine the show for me and it kind of pulled me out. Like when I'm watching Survivor, I'm surprisingly just fucking engaged and engrossed the whole time. Right? You're in that environment with them and you see them become less human.
Yeah, you hate everybody and you hate more and more people as it goes on, but I never find myself questioning the producers or the cameramen of Survivor. And I think that's the difference.
I don't know. I'm curious to know what other people think of the show. Like, I know a lot of people have watched it because obviously it's number one in most countries in the world.
But is it though?
We don't know how many minutes of watching actually constitutes a number one show. But Squid Game the challenge, we have a couple of questions. We want to know if you really enjoyed this. And also, we want to know if breaking it up into chunks affected your experience of the show? Like, do you want to come back for more? Will you forget and just move on to something else? I can understand when it's Stranger Things and there is such a big cliffhanger that you want to come back and watch the last four parts. But for reality TV, do you feel the same way?
Or are you planning on waiting for all three bits to drop before you even pay attention to this? To be fair, this is a reality TV show. It's not the best writing in the world.
It isn't. Yeah.
So if anything, I suspect there might be more people who are thinking to themselves, I really liked that Korean show Squid Game, and I think I will wait for all these episodes of the reality show to drop before I watch it.
Let us know. You know how to reach out. Goggler MY, all of our social media feeds. Podcast at goggler.my is our email address. You can also WhatsApp us on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Drop us a line on any one of those channels and we'll send you a link to join our Discord server where you can chat with us in real time. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.